Time for a soccer down here 1v1, and for this one, we go East Coast to West Coast and catch up with Juan Guzman, Jr., state referee, admin, business development manager out at CalSouth. He's busy out there in Southern California. He's got a history of being a man in the middle, a man on the side holding up a light board and catching note cards from folks, and he's also got a history of seeing things in monitors and trying to find out what the proper call should be in a situation for this time is a VAR. Thanks for hanging out with us for a 1v1. I got questions.
Well, I mean, hopefully I have answers, but thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here, and hopefully I can give some insight on really what happens in with when you wear that shirt and you go out and referee these difficult matches, not only on the grassroots level but also in Major League Soccer and beyond.
All right, so let me get into the VAR discussion here a little bit because you've been FIFA trained, you've spent some time in Major League Soccer as a VAR. What do they do when they say, "Okay, you're going to be VAR"? Do they throw you into a room with a bunch of monitors and sit there and go, or it's like, "All right, give me an answer." Those kinds of things. Or what's the process where they sit there and they try to educate you about the technology and the decisions that you're going to have to make and the conversations that you have to have?
Well, I was in that original group where the U.S. was allowed to kind of start VAR here in the States. There was only a few countries in the world that were allowed to do it, and I'm in that originally trained, people that did it. So in the beginning, there was only referees that were current were allowed to be in that VAR seat. And at that time, I was refereeing in MLS. I was a FIFA referee, and I was one of the ones selected to be in that original training. So it took over about 24 months of training behind the scenes, getting ready. We had a lot of the trainings. The pro referees meet every 2 weeks when the season's going on, and they go through, we call it the match critical incidents, or the incidents that change the game. And it's about 25 to 30 referees, only center referees are in the room, and they're critiquing each other on some of the situations that happen, right? It's a tough room because you have a lot of interesting personalities there. But you could imagine some topics get heated, some topics everybody agrees on. But at the end of the day, when you go out of there, we should have some sort of cohesiveness and consistency, right? Everybody has a little bit of a different personality, but the objective is to try to bring that together. But yeah, it was about 24 months that we had some training games. So we used some of the preseason matches, and we had the VARs there. We had some in Arizona, different parts where they had a concentration of MLS teams. And we would go out and basically, okay, these were the rules, because there is rules for VAR that were sent down by FIFA, and there's also mechanics, certain words that mean certain things. And it wasn't an easy process, because when you're on the field, if you make a mistake, people kind of say it's human error, right? You only got to look at it once. But when you're in the booth, you have 15, 20 cameras. Human error kind of goes out of the picture. However, there's a lot of judgment that people don't understand, because there can be one camera angle that gives you one answer, and the very next camera angle on the other side that is completely the opposite. So if you're a referee, only really referees that have been on the match, those type of games, really can dissect or identify which one is the one that's going to be the correct one. And sometimes it's conflicting. So I can see why, there's so many issues with VAR, is because you still have the judgment factor in the booth.
Should there be a VAR track when it comes to, say, Major League Soccer as an example? Any league that is organized that is a first division league, should there just be a VAR track? Should the PGMOL have a VAR track? Should Major League, or should Pro have just a VAR track? Dudes that just want to do that for a living, or in addition to that, say the center refs that might be aging out of the process for one reason or another, should they just be exclusive VAR? Should we have exclusivity when it comes to VAR, or do you see merit in folks drifting in and out of the booth?
It's difficult. It's difficult because you're right. Right now, what's happening is you have a lot of the referees that are aging out, and now they're pushing them towards VAR. But you also have a lot of the young referees that are maybe have 3 games in the league, 4 games in the league, and because of the amount of matches and the amount of referees, they end up being VAR. So in reality, just like a referee, you're going to go out there and you don't know if you're going to get the most experienced guy on a good day or the one that's coming in new on a good day. And it's similar to VAR, right? You get that same nuance. I think it's difficult. It depends on the referee, their capacity to understand the match. So you need to have somebody that has some sort of experience at that level because there is no second division here in the United States that compares to MLS.
Then let me ask this as a follow-up. When it comes to ego, presence, persona, would it not lend itself to add to the difficulty if you have two established center refs who feel themselves, as the big dudes? It's like, I'm a Class A guy, I'm center ref, I have this kind of experience. For that one match that he's VAR and he's going up against another alpha, does that not create some kind of conflict on one level? And then also you would have an alpha and a beta, or the younger inexperienced guy might be either in the booth as VAR. He might be a little too afraid to say something because he doesn't want to step on toes because his career might be impacted for it. Or would he listen that much more if an alpha's in the booth and the beta's downstairs? I mean, it sounds like that there are opportunities here for clashes of personalities, either A and B, you're not making decisions for one reason or another, or two alphas going at it like rams on a mountainside. It seems hazardous at points.
Yeah, you're bringing up great points, and those are real factors. Those are real factors that at the end of the day, everybody should be professionals out there. But you're right. Sometimes when you're coming up, you don't want to step on anybody's toes. You don't want to have that when you meet again, hey, you didn't go with my call. But how FIFA set it up is basically the referee has the final decision. But in reality, if a VAR sends something down, he's not sending a question. He's sending his solution to the problem. And that's what I think people don't understand as well. If somebody calls you if you get a call from the VAR and you're going to go see the screen, it's because that person deems that to be whatever that decision was missed, right? And it has to be clear and obvious. If not, you're not going to send down a question. You're going to send out a solution. So every time I see somebody getting called to the VAR, oh, that's a penalty kick. Oh, that's a red card, right? Because the evidence on the screen is telling you that that's what it is. If not, you're not going to send it down. Now, when it's overturned, in the sense that the VAR sends it down and the referee that's on the day says, you know what, I don't agree with you, that's where I think where your factors come in, right? Where you gotta judge, okay, is this gonna affect me or not? At the end of the day, if somebody sends it down, 95% of the time it's gonna be reversed.
When it comes to communication, and I know that, as the son of an English major, my mom pressed upon me at a very early age to make sure that your modifiers were correct, that you were saying what you meant to say, and that you didn't leave anything out there to chance for where a misplaced modifier could be, misconstrued. And you sit there and you're thinking one thing, you leave a word out, the opposite happens. We had that in the Premier League earlier this season, where you have all of these conversations going on all at once, and one guy says good, no, he was offside, and you have this collision of ideas. When it comes to communicating, that's got to be key. But how do you make sure that you're trying to, A, not take a whole lot of time, B, get the call right, and C, say what you mean to say? It seems like there's a couple of different things at play here that you've got to sort out as a part of your training to be a proper VAR.
Yeah, I think a pregame is really important, right? And at that level, the referees meet for breakfast, they meet for lunch, and they're going through scenarios. And then even before the match, they arrive 2 hours before, and they're going through a pregame. If you've already worked with the referee, or somebody's already worked, let's say with me, if I was the referee, they kind of know what words are trigger words. A lot of the referees you got to say it 3 times, because the first time that you say it, you might be talking to a player. You might be focused on what just happened and trying to process it through your mind. So if it's something that's necessary, referees use that say it 3 times, because you're right, it can get lost. Or let's say the other AR is you're using some sort of terminology and talking to a player that's an open mic, so you can literally hear what that person's saying. So if the question is there room for error? 100%. And I think the ones that do it really well, they communicate it multiple times, right? Okay, this is a send off to number 5 for this, that, or the other. And when it's VAR to referee, the ARs know to be quiet, right? But sometimes they're dealing with coaches because something just big happened. So it's a difficult realm. It's not an easy thing to do, but there is preparation for that. Is there room for error? I think there is.
Juan Guzman hanging out with us from the CalSouth referee program here for a 1v1, kind of pulling back the curtain a little bit from his experiences being a center ref and being a guy in the booth for VAR here on SDH. Let me get into what it's like down there for an on-field official. And obviously, statute of limitations, I know, is still out there and wanting to keep names secret and all this kind of stuff. But when it comes to dealing with players who want to get in your grill and they want to sit there and pull out the imaginary card and they want to wave it in your face and they want to sit there and point fingers and have spirited discussions, what's that like on a professional level to have someone or someone's 5 or 6 guys crowding around you trying to sit there to get you to sway your opinion one way or the other? What's that like, having all of that noise around you in addition to the folks in your ear trying to tell you what's going on?
That's an interesting conversation. In the majority of my career as an MLS referee, I didn't have VAR. So you had to connect with players and you had to change their behavior with your personality, right? And if you didn't, then you were going to end up with a game of 8, 9 yellow cards and a few send-offs, right? And nowadays the difficulty is, what I've been seeing, a lot of referees are hiding behind the VAR, not really dealing with problematic players, because they're just pointing their finger, and I got a lot of guys who are probably going to be pissed off at me for saying this, but they're pointing their finger, and it's generally the younger ones that are coming up. They're pointing their finger and saying, hold on, it's being checked. Well, you're not really connecting with a human being if you're not, one, hearing them out, because it's good to listen. As if you listen, you're going to get, things that they're upset about, and you're going to try to adjust, right? Or, you know what, hey, I can't adjust it. That's what it was. But at least you're giving them an answer. But if you're just saying, hey, let me just wait until somebody checks it, then you're not really bonding with that player. And at the end, when there's a 50-50 decision that you have to make a decision, you haven't connected with that player. So I think that needs to change. We cannot hide behind the VAR as a referee. And, you have to connect with those players, get them to do the things that you need them to do, right? By having this connection. And it starts from when you get there. When you get there, you're able to communicate with some of the players. Hello, how are you doing? Or you've already seen them a few times, right? Because you've refereed in the league for a while. And these moments that are not on air, these are the ones where you have to get people in your pocket to help you manage other individuals as well. I know you talked in your previous podcast about an individual that got sent, that got repercussions by the league, and I saw a lot of those. I saw the highlights of that game. I didn't see the full game, but I saw a lot of opportunities missed in connecting with this player. And sometimes connecting can be a strong word. Stop, right? Or, you know what, hey, I called a foul for you, and now you want, there's different ways to go about it. But at the end of the day, you cannot hide behind the VAR.
Yeah, we'll get into Matt Miazga before we're done here today. How do we keep, in your mind, how do we keep VAR as an aid and not a crutch? Because I think a lot of folks will sit there these days and you may see center refs far more reliant on going to a monitor or getting that word in their earpiece. How do we sit there and balance the idea of having VAR, which is supposed to be an aid, but not have a center refs sit there and go, oh, what's VAR think? And continuing to have to reference and go over to VAR and not have it be a part. It should be a part of the process. It shouldn't take over the process.
Right. I mean, to me, VAR was something that was a tool because I didn't really have it, right? So when I had it, it was the tail end of my career. So to me, it was a tool. I didn't really rely on it. But I think you hit it on the nail where, referees now, like if you don't have VAR, I don't know, I don't even know how to referee anymore.
Yeah.
And we got to get back to the basics. I think VAR opened up a lot of Pandora's box, and it's hard to bring it back in, right? I think it should have just been a few things that it looked at, like for instance, goal, no goal, things that are really difficult to capture at the speed of the game that we play now. Not so much fouls, changing a yellow to a red. To me, those are things that unless it's a violent act, it shouldn't be part of the game because now you're seeing it's now instead of one judgment on the field, right? Now you have another one in the booth. And like you said, it can be conflicting at times. And at the end of the day, I think it's confusing people more than it's enhancing the game.
What about a time limit? Because it seems those of us who are behind microphones who talk about games, I'm predisposed to thinking that the more you're staring at a monitor in a time frame, the more you seem to be looking for something. You're not looking at something, you're looking for something. Because there are times when you'll have 2.5, 3 minutes, 3.5 looking at monitors. Fans are whistling overseas. You got people wanting to throw things, and the emotions are getting out of control. I would maintain some kind of a time limit, 90 seconds, 2 minutes, maybe 2.5 max if it's a serious foul. So you're not searching for something. It's like, okay, go ahead, make the decision, sit on it, go, get back to playing.
Yeah, in my opinion, if you're taking way too long, it's not clear and obvious. So it's something that should just be okay, check complete. And that's the difficulty of it. But the thing is that there's a lot of weight on these referees. I had a lot of weight on my shoulders. And you don't want to get anything wrong, right? And when you do that, you're kind of in a frantic mode at times. There's some that can handle it better than others, but you're kind of like, okay, well, I don't want to miss anything. And with doing so, you're checking all of the screens that you could possibly think that you can get the right answer. And you're right. You're more of I'm trying to find it than it's jumping out in front of me. And if that decision is not jumping out in front of you, that it was a clear and obvious error, then you should move on, right? And the coaches and the players should actually understand that as well. But sometimes that kind of gets lost in the whole thick of things.
How helpful are AVARs in this process?
AVARs are a safeguard. So, for instance, the VAR is looking at a play, right? And when the VAR says, "Okay, it's a big red button," I don't know if you've been inside of a VAR booth. It's a big red button right in front of you, right? It's kind of like the Batmobile button. You press the button, and the whole room lights up.
Okay.
And what you're pressing is because you've identified that one of the four things a VAR checks for, right, is a possibility. So you hit that button and the whole room lights up. You have a person next to you that is tech savvy and he's throwing the camera angles that you want into your screen. You have a good amount of screens around you. But when you're in a button pressing check, right, you're not seeing in reality live anymore. So that's where the AVAR comes into play, where now it's his turn to see live because one, you have to you have to tell the referee before the restart happens that you're checking, right? For him to hold up the play. Or if the play continued, you got to make sure that there's not another VAR check. So the AVAR is essential in when that button's pressed, right? And if he tells you, "Hey Juan, hurry up, you have seconds before they put the ball in the play," then you need a little bit more time. Then you tell the referee we're checking, and that's where he holds up the play. And the VAR is kind of helping you. The AVR is helping you in that instant.
In your estimation, are we using it too much? This is the Goldilocks question. Are we using it too much? Are we using it too little? Or are we just right when it comes to administrating VAR these days?
Well, refereeing, there's always going to be controversy with one team or the other, especially when it's a match changing incident. right? And you hope that the soccer gods are even with all the clubs. And, if one gets a decision that was deemed to be incorrect, they all do. But that's not soccer. That's not real life, right? And there's certain situations that are magnified because of like we've talked about some of the stuff, but there's so many things that are just magnified because there's so much behind it, right? Especially you see it in the World Cups where it's difficult. It's so difficult to look at a timed situation with 20 cameras and you have to decide which one's the best angle. Think about that. And people do not expect you to get it wrong because you had the opportunity to get it right. And as a referee in the middle, without that, I feel that there's a little bit less of a burden and pressure. But then there's these big decisions that change the course of a country, like a handball to score a goal, or like a goal that barely went through and it became a goal because of centimeters. And I think that's where the VAR should go, and not so much on judgment of decisions or calls, because that should be left to the referee at the end, which it is now. But if, like I said, if somebody sends something down, he's sending you a solution. He's not sending you a question. So even though at the moment you're the referee, you have a penalty kick, no penalty kick, and the angle that you had, what you saw, you don't call it. And then somebody calls you in the VAR, hey, Juan, you got this one wrong, buddy. Can you go see it? You're already kind of predisposed with the idea that it's a penalty kick. And that's like, you're like at the end of the cliff, right? And when somebody tells you that, I'm going to jump because that's my safeguard. Nothing's going to happen to me if I go with that person, right? Because they're seeing it in front of you. Now, there's some referees that, they have a lot of experience. And even though they're about to push them off the cliff, they're like, you know what? That's not right. But that's not the majority. It's more a system that's placed for the referee to change that call because the VAR is sending it down.
Two more questions, and thanks for hanging out with us. It's Juan Guzman out at CalSouth and CalSouth referee program here for a 1v1. Matt Miazga, I know that he's been a topic on the network pretty much. He's monopolized the morning show pretty much for like the last week with everything going on in Cincinnati, whether it's him or his manager or the comments or PSRA and all these other kinds of things. For someone who has been in a room that is supposed to be a fortress of solitude in a professional arena, it's like on the door, no admittance, referees only, no one else but us. For someone like, for anybody, for anyone to violate that confidence, come into that room and sit there and ask more than once or demand, apparently, that they wanted to speak to the effing referee, despite the other referees in the ARs in the room sitting here saying, what are you doing in here? You've got to be out of here. You're not supposed to be in here 5 times. And a player like Matt Miazga says, no, I want to speak to the effing referee. What is it like for you and for your fellow officials who have experience at the top levels to see an incident like this where a player violates a confidence in one of the actual tenets of the sport in going into a place they're not supposed to go into?
Yeah, I think it never happened to me, to be honest with you. All of the language that was a little bit colorful, it was on the field or leaving the field. But yeah, it's an area where really nobody should go, because at that time the referees are, doing their game report, right? And you don't want any influence from that. In my time, there was only allowed 3 questions, right? And I'm not sure exactly how it is now, but in my time, each team was allowed 3 questions, and there's usually a referee liaison that is either working for pro or hired by the teams. I don't know how it is now, but that's how it was in the past. And they're the ones that are the contact between the officials and the clubs. So to violate that, I think it's something that if the league wasn't strong, which I think they were strong about, then it's something that was gonna be encouraged because it's gonna keep on happening. So it's tough for supporters of that team to see one of their best players miss out on their one of the biggest games that they're gonna have all season. But at the end of the day, I was a member of PSRA in my time. They're really good people. They're there for the right reasons, right? And they have a good working relationships with the referees and with MLS and with Pro. And I think to me, it was done correctly by MLS because everybody was putting pressure to let him play or let any player that does that play. But I don't think that it should be violated. Something like that, like you said, it's like a sacred fortress, right? At the end of the day, the game is over. There's nothing, there's nothing that player needs to go. There's nothing constructive that the player is going to do. There's no reason why the player should be back there, right? And to me, that it was a situation that it's unfortunate because there's security guards there as well, right? And if they're hired by the club or the venue, maybe it was like you said, something that okay, well, you can pass through, but don't be that mean to them, right? But at the end of the day, it's something that shouldn't have been done.
So what's going on at CalSouth that folks need to know about? For those that don't know about CalSouth on this side of the Mississippi River, what is it? What do you guys do? And what's the latest going on out there?
Well, we're the referee program, so we focus on all the education. We certify all the referees. We have about 5,000 referees. So if anybody wants to be a referee in Southern California or is coming to California, we have a whole ecosystem of assigners, assessors, instructors. But yeah, right now we're working on a referee respect campaign and making people aware of how they act on the sidelines, right? And it's something that I think we're kind of leading into as well. It's more to bring awareness to that and recommendations on how to combat that, right? At the end of the day, I think parents should be celebrated for the work that they do to bring their kids. I mean, I have kids that play, and sometimes I don't have the time to take them, but I stop whatever I'm doing and I try to get them out there as much as I can. And I think that should be celebrated. That should be highlighted instead of the 10% or the 5% that happens of referee abuse. I think we should highlight the good things that people do for soccer to be played in their community.
Looking forward to it. And folks can go to calsouth.com and they can get more information for those in Southern California, in the South Bay there in Fullerton. I mean, it's as a child of Lakewood, I know Fullerton all too well. So Juan Guzman, thanks for hanging out with us, former U.S. Soccer, FIFA, and MLS ref, to kind of pull back the curtain a bit on VAR. Thanks for hanging out with us. Good luck with all the work that you're doing there at CalSouth. We'll catch up with you soon, my friend.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Take care.